What's up, what's up, what's up? It's John here from JJSC Tech. How is your Sunday going? You know, first day of the week. How you doing? Hopefully you're relaxing. Enjoy Mother's Day. Shout out to all the mothers out there, Hopefully this day is going great for you. We already got my man Tristan. What's up, what's up? Good afternoon. Yes, sir. Good afternoon. So hopefully everything is going well with you. Don't stress. Living in stressful times, but take one day at a time. All right. So today we're going to talk about cinematic cameras for streaming. Why would you do such a thing? Why do you want to do such a thing? I mean, cameras have came a long way. I remember starting out with a Canon T3i, and that camera was good for the time, but I never thought of using that in a professional setting for like streaming or anything of that nature. The standard back then was broadcast cameras, but now, after COVID, a lot of people are migrating over to cinematic cameras. But what is a cinematic camera? There's a few things you got to know and you got to understand if you're choosing a cinematic camera for live streaming. Three to four main reasons. Let's go over to the screen right here. So I pulled up this article from B&H. This does a pretty good breakdown of what a cinematic camera is, or a cinema camera. This picture right here is crazy. If you see what type of camera that is, that's the old Blackmagic 4K, and this lens is a Canon 50 to 1000. That thing is like a $70,000 lens, and this is nuts. But as you see, Blackmagic is popping up for like your budget cinema camera. But what is a cinematic camera? So a cinematic camera gives you that cinematic look. And basically that's a look that's closer to the filmic look. Like for instance, like this is a filmic look. So this is a film that was shot on the Kodak Vision 3, so an actual film camera. As you see, it looks way different than what we're accustomed to looking at on our broadcast streams. It's much softer, the highlight roll off and etc. But we're gonna get into that. But this is closer. This is pure cinematic right here. So this is what B&A says. It helps to look at the big boys. The top of the line cameras being used to make major motion pictures. Why are they being selected? What do they offer that makes directors, DPs, and producer pick them over the other productions? When reading interviews, you'll often discover it's because the camera could produce cinematic images with high dynamic range that feel filmic. This is point number one right here. Why you choose cinematic cameras over everything else. Mirrorless, broadcasting cameras, high dynamic range. We're going to get into that later. Remember this point right here. So this is when discussing different aspects of digital cameras, you'll find me consistently referring to film as the reference point because that's where the cinematic look originated from, film. So what does it mean to look cinematic? As a moviegoer, your eyes and brain have been trained over the years to know how a film should look. You also know, perhaps even more so, when something does not look cinematic. While professional set design, lighting, and shot selection play a significant role in achieving the cinematic look, Many camera factors contribute as well, including image size, resolution, dynamic range, and color sampling. These are some of the major factors that you need to consider, along with more practical considerations, such as recording format, connectivity, and form factor. Now if you're just using your camera for live streaming purposes, I mean, if you're in a church setting and you get a cinematic camera, you shouldn't be only using a cinematic camera for live streaming, because it's a cinematic camera. You can, shoot like testimony videos, short films, and it's multi-purpose. But if you are just using a set of cinematic cameras for live streaming, these are the things that you're going to have to consider. Form factor, 100%. Recording formats, not so much. Connectivity, definitely. High dynamic range and sensor size. Sensor size, not so much, because more cinematic cameras come in APS-C or Super 35 and full frame. Now, if you got the budget to do full frame, this show is not for you because full frame cinematic cameras are insane. I'm not talking about let me watch my words. I'm not really talking about the semi full frame cinematic cameras like your Sony FX3 and etc. Those are more like a hybrid cinematic camera, not a real cinematic camera. The reason being of the image, the look. We're going to get to that. All right, so lens mount is another aspect that you should consider. It all depends on the lens that you'll be using. You could be using EF, PL. I don't recommend anything that's Micro Four Thirds, because it won't look that good on the image. Sensor size. Here we go. So there's two sensor sizes that you should be looking for. Super 35, which is a crop sensor. More have a crop sensor of a 1.5. So if you put a 50 millimeter on your 35 millimeter, it's not really going to be a 50 millimeter. It's going to be closer to 60, 65, 70, depending on how intense that crop factor is. And there's also your full frame. Now, for some reason, not full frame. So full frame, if you put a 50 millimeter 50 millimeter lens on that full frame, you'll get a 50 millimeter. And stuff like that, like behind me. That right there, that is a V Raptor full frame. So on there, I have a 35 millimeter. 35 millimeter. And this also want to focus on me, so let me go out of frame. Yep, I have a 35 millimeter, and when you put a 35 millimeter on that, you get what you get with that. So those are things to consider. Let's go back to here, and let's get to the meat and potatoes. There's things like depth of field. Now, depth of field, it depends on the look that you want to go with. Now, cinematic cameras, it's also the lens. The lens plays a big factor into it, as well as the sensor size, how much blur in the background you'll get. I have a prop right here. I can show you. Yeah, I'll wait till that camera turns on and then I'll show you. So for broadcasting purposes or live streaming purposes for like churches, you don't want to OD on the blurry background. Like, for instance, if you have a lead singer and a praise team, you don't want to blur out the people in the background. because you want them in focus. But you can capture everyone in focus and blur out the rest of the background if you're going for that shot. Now, for the main shot, I would capture everything. I'll make sure everything is in focus. Like if you got an LED wall behind you, make sure all that's in focus, and make sure that main shot has everything. Now, with your secondary, third, fourth shot, or how many other cameras you have, you can choose to be creative with that. Now, if you just want if there's a certain part that the singer is singing, probably like a vamp or a buildup of the song and etc., you can focus in on the keyboard or the person playing the keys, the drummer, the musician, and you can do things like rack focus. So you can focus on, say, someone like the keyboardist. You can focus on his fingers, and then you can rack focus to like the person who is singing. So there's a lot of creative things you can do with the cinematic camera. So that's some things that you can do. I mean, you kind of could do it with a broadcast camera, but it's kind of difficult, and those things are heavy. A broadcast camera is heavy. Now, this should be the number one reason you are going for a cinematic camera: dynamic range. These two images show the differences between a camera that has pretty good dynamic range and a camera that has pretty bad dynamic range. Now, broadcast cameras kind of sit in between of these two images. I mean, these are too extreme. Broadcast cameras are not that great when it comes to dynamic range. They're good with focus, and they're good with connectivity. Like if you have a team and someone can change the iris remotely, like from a truck, and stuff of that nature. But when it comes to things like separating or showing the difference between the highlights and the really dark darks, it's not good. And skin tones. Skin tones are the number one reason you should go for a cinematic camera. They produce the best skin tones, second to none. Especially if you have people that are like have darker skin tones like myself, a cinematic camera is going to do it justice. A broadcasting camera just doesn't capture that much information. So these are other reasons why you should do this. Log gamma. Now log and gamma, this will go into raw. This is if you're recording. This doesn't really matter if you are streaming, because another cool thing about cinematic cameras is that depending on your setup, you can actually color grade for the live stream, and it will look much better. Now you can have like a raw or a log image coming from the camera, and you can send that to something like the switcher, and depending on your switcher, you can actually color grade it from the program, the switcher program, or even the streaming program, because the streaming program that I'm using is Ecamm, and I can color grade inside of Ecamm. OBS, you can do the same thing in a whole lot of other streaming programs. You can do the same thing. So these log and raw is important for recording. Depending on how advanced you are or how advanced your setup is, it can be very important for streaming as well. Resolution doesn't really matter because most people stream in 1080p. You don't need 8K and 12K or whatever it is out there. A good 1080p is all you need, because there's some 1080p's that look better than many 4Ks. many 4Ks. For instance, things like the Arri Alexa, the first Arri Alexa, the OG Arri Alexa, that does 2K, only 2K. And the 1080p from that camera looks far better than many other cameras' 4Ks. True. 100% truth. And let's get into the other thing. Like, yeah, you don't need to, like, 8K, not with streaming. The most you stream is 4K. And if you're trying to incorporate a 4K stream, these things you have to consider. Your camera has to be 4K. The switcher you're connecting it to has to be 4K. What you're streaming has to be 4K. So your internet has to be good enough to send 4K. And anyone who is watching, they must be able to watch 4K. So if you check off all those boxes, then you can do 4K, but it's not a big deal. Get proper lighting, get a camera that has good skin tones, great dynamic range, and a good lens, and 1080p is going to be rocking. Sensitivity and low light. Yep. This is more so for like the sensor size. Now Sony does a little cheat. Sony does a big cheat, like the FX3s and the FX6s and etc. Like a lot of that is algorithm. What they actually do is they do a lot of processing on the sensor itself before they push it out to the file. So for instance, with Red Komodo or any Red camera, the image coming out of the camera after you record it doesn't look that great in low light because it's raw. It doesn't do any processing. So you can clean that up in post and etc. Sony does the processing inside the camera, so it looks much better to the naked eye. But if you do some, a magnifying glass and really look at it, you see there's a bit of quality lacking in those cameras. But the Sony Venice, on the other hand, this is a monster of a camera. The image, it records raw as well, but the image from this camera is amazing. There are many I want to say many churches. There are a few churches using the Sony Venice, but there are many news corporations that are using the Sony Venice as well. Hollywood is also going over to the Sony Venice as well, just because of the look, the way the highlight roll-off is, the color, the skin tones, and etc. Yeah, so that should show you as well. If the news and major broadcast companies are moving over to the cinematic look, that should tell you something. Cinematic cameras are the in thing for broadcasting now. Also, Arri, which is like the number one for the number one cinema camera. Like if you look at majority of your Hollywood films, 9 out of 10 times they're shot on an Arri, some sort of Arri. They also made the transition to streaming, broadcasting. So you can get an Arri Alexa 35 and get a license for streaming, and you can get like other components attached to the camera, and you can have a complete Arri look for streaming. Now, if you have that set up, please invite me because I want to see it. I want to see it. I've used an Arri before. It's amazing, and I would love to see that in a cinema setup. Now, there's certain things like the global shutter and rolling shutter. Now, how can I easily explain this? Now, a rolling shutter, when light hits the sensor, it captures the image. A rolling shutter captures the image bit by bit or piece by piece. So it will capture the top part of the sensor and then the bottom part of the sensor. So if you're moving back and forth fast, panning, you will get like this jello look. Now, this could be a big deal if depending on the type of shots you're doing for your live stream. Now, if you're doing like really fast action panning and etc., you might want to consider a global shutter. Now, a global shutter, it captures the entire image all at once on the sensor. So rolling shutter, half, global shutter, full sensor. So you won't get this jello effect while panning back and forth quickly with a global shutter camera. Cameras like, yes, the Red Komodo, Z-Cam, things of that nature have global shutter. Recording, frame rates, codecs and bit rate. Now, these are all very important, like when you're recording. Good. Color bit depth. Now, color bit depth. This is another important thing. The reason being, the more colors that the image can capture, the more truer the image looks. Now, there's some cinema cameras that's only like 8-bit. Now, 8-bit versus 10-bit is a huge jump. 8-bit versus 12-bit, huge, massive jump. 8-bit versus 16 is insane. That's why some of like the darker skin tones and etc. looks a bit better on a red because of bit depth. The sensor just captures more colors. Chroma sub, raw, and let's get to form factor. Now, this is something else that you should consider while you're getting a cinema camera. Now, Blackmagic is a very good camera. Very good starter camera. Let's do some specs here. Now this is the Pocket 6K. Boom. 21 megapixels. You're not really taking pictures. Image sensor, Super 35. Check. Very good. Internal RAW, if you're doing any type of like videos, testimony videos or anything of that nature, it's pretty good. 4K, 4-bit 222, ProRes, external recording. Now it can only do 10-bit if you record externally to like an external monitor. That's a downfall. Now, you're not going to get everything if you're only spending $2,500 for a cinema camera. This is a very entry-level cinema camera. And the reason it's so low because it lacks a lot of features that professionals need. We're going to get into this. Let's go to battery. So it uses Sony L series battery. That's this. That's this right here. Now this is a bigger L series battery. The reason this is a big deal is because when you're streaming, you need to have that camera running for a very long time. These batteries probably can last hour and a half. And the things like the bigger sensor and color and the more things that the camera uses, the more power it will pull. These won't last that long. You need to have something like a V-mount. Now, things like V-mounts, they're much bigger, have a much bigger capacity. So this is a 150. Now, this on a Blackmagic, boy, yeah, you'll be able to run that camera for a very long time. But the issue is the form factor. There is nowhere to mount a V-mount battery on the Blackmagic. So you're gonna have to do a crazy rig setup just to make a V-mount battery work. Those are things you're gonna have to look into. What else? The connections, things like connections, because you're going to need things like, now, if this is the second, third camera, like say someone is roaming, trying to catch candid shots of the crowd, shots of the guy playing the keys, shots of the drummer, and etc. This needs to be handheld. So what you need to put on this is a wireless transmitter device. Now you see where this can get really technical. You're going to have to build this out somehow in order to have a wireless transmitter, a big enough battery, a better lens as well, because your lens is going to be pretty heavy, and it needs to be comfortable enough to hold all that stuff. So this is why a lot of cinematographers hate this camera, is because of the form factor. Oh, and as well, one of the biggest things, it has HDMI. HDMI is not a professional port. It is not. Reason being, now if you're in a church, if you're doing a venue, and say you have volunteers, teaching the volunteers how to use the camera, how to do certain maneuvers, how to do certain tactics and etc. with the camera, how to get certain shots, go low, put it up above your head and etc. Anything to get the shot right. One finger slip can remove this HDMI cable. And not only that, if it drops, your camera will drop. It will drop. You don't want it to drop, but something will happen, especially in the field. For those who be in the field, you know, something will happen. If your camera drops and drops on this HDMI port right here, is over. It's over. It's over. And plus, you run through HDMI cables like water. It's not a good port. More professional port is the SDI. SDI ports are the way to go because they have that locking connector, and it's just way more sturdy. Plus, you can do longer runs with the SDI cable as well. That's if you're not doing the wireless transmitter route. I personally use wireless transmitter route, but to each his own. Depending on your setup, you might do a hard wire connector. So SDI is the way to go. Longer runs, less room for error, and yeah, it's just more professional. And most of the time you have two ports, one for input and another one for like a loop out if you feel like running to something else like an external monitor. Now the Komodo and etc., those are weird decisions by Red to bring down the price. They only have one SDI port, so there's ways to work around that as well. So that's it for the Blackmagic. Let's go on to a broadcast camera. Well, before we get to that, let's do something like FX6. FX6. Now FX6 is a cinema camera, not a full cinema camera, but it checks off a whole lot of boxes. But the image and etc. It lacks in that department. Now, I'm not saying that the image of an FX6 doesn't look good, but if you put it against things like a Red or a Arri Alexa or even a Sony Venice, it does not look the same. It does not hold up that well with the skin tones and etc., especially for a live setting. Now, I also did a live stream about lenses. A lens makes the right lens on any camera will make a huge difference. Now, having the proper lens on this camera it is gonna look pretty good. It is gonna look really good actually. I stay away from G Master lenses because again they're photo lenses, and it's just gonna make your image look really sharp, over sharp actually, and the colors aren't going to be all that natural. Just warning you. So again, it has an SDI. Now you get a lot with the Sony Venice. You get the screen, you get the top handle, you get a whole lot of stuff with the Sony Venice. But again, you can't really run this for a long time because of this battery right here. You're gonna have to do some sort of rig so you can get a bigger battery in this thing. The form factor is pretty good. It's pretty good. You can't do much rigging out on this. And as well, I would do like a bigger screen, because if you're looking at the screen like 3-4 hours while you're live streaming, you're gonna need a bigger screen. Because the bigger screens help with focusing. 7-inch screen is the way to go. 5-inch you can kind of get away with, but 7 inches is definitely the way to go. Things like this, like the Canon EOS R, the image on this looks pretty good, but again, the form factor, it doesn't stack up against cinema cameras. This is a mirrorless camera. This doesn't even stack up against the FX6. FX6 has a much better image than this, especially when it comes to video. Much better. Now again, you could put a pretty good lens on this and it's gonna look decent, but I'd stay away from this. And we have your broadcast camera. Now these are pretty good. I have experience working with these massive cameras. I am not going mobile with this camera at all. Get it? This thing is like, it's like 30 something pounds. Now the package weight is 31 pounds. Now it says the weight is 8.4 pounds. Now that's the camera itself, and you're gonna have quite a few things. Now you have the monitor, you have the lens. The lens is gonna be completely different. That's gonna add weight as well. Just moving around mobile with this, you better have like a back brace or something. And plus, the image isn't that good. The image is decent, unless if you want that broadcast look, but the skin tones aren't going to be really realistic like that. And the dynamic range is not close to these cinematic cameras. And plus, this is crazy expensive. Yeah. Oh, so this is just a video that I found interesting, how ESPN uses Sony Venice to bring cinematic look to live broadcasting. So yeah, even ESPN is changing over to cinematic cameras. They see the benefit. They see it's more true. Like the skin tones are true to real life. The colors are more accurate. Like even the Super Bowl is transitioning over to cinematic cameras as well. But yeah, so let's get to a camera build. Now, why aren't you switching, bro? Okay, there you go. So I use red. So this is one of the reds that I use. This is the Red Komodo X, and it's just a small box. Can this focus? There you go. Yeah. So don't worry about the skin and whatnot. The skin, this is a skin that I put on because I like to be different, you know. I like to be the same, you know. So these are the things that you'll have to take in consideration. Now, when you buy a cinematic camera, it's not you just buy and then you're just ready to shoot. You got to buy quite a few things to have it up and ready, but that's the beauty of it. You can build it out to whatever your task is, you know, whatever you want to do. If you want it to be just a small build so you can run around and just get like piano shots or drum shots, and you don't want it to be too heavy, you can build it out that way. A box is like the best design because you can build it out any way you want to build it out. So this comes with a Canon RF, but I don't like using photo glass as much. I put this Metabone Speed Booster PL mount because I have PL glass and I can just slap a PL mount on here and the image is going to look great. And you have stuff like side ribs, and you have a NATO reel right here that you can add a handle. Then you have this top NATO reel. I just put a riser so I can put my monitor because I like it a little higher. And you have things like a breakout box. So this breakout box is really convenient because it adds a lot of things to this camera. It's kind of hard to focus, huh? I'm sorry, I'm using a vintage lens on my other camera, so it's nice and it blurs out the background nicely, but I guess I need more light over here. Yeah, so you have your run stop, you have your EXT, so you can add something else. You have your control, you have your record, and at the side you have even more stuff. So you have your power, your 2-pin LEMO. So if I'm running like a Teradek or follow focus, I can just plug it in right here and I can provide power to that device. I don't have to put like a Teradek onto it and attach another battery on it, which will make the rig heavier. Everything can just run off of this one V-mount battery. And you have your D-taps that you can plug different accessories in there, and you can have Genlock. Now, I haven't used Genlock, but Genlock is similar to timecode, but for broadcasting. So the same way timecode works with recording, how it syncs everything up, Genlock will sync things up with broadcasting. So good thing to have. And then you have your regular power. Now, this cage is, it just works for me. It just works for me. So you don't have to follow this build. This build I found after a couple of months of research and testing that this one works for me. And I have this Condor Blue quick release right here. So when I get the Teradek, I can just click it on right here and then run all the power to this breakout box, and this is ready to go. This is ready to go handheld. And this is not as heavy. Altogether, this is probably like a good 5 to 6 pounds. And then you put a PL lens on there, and then it's probably gonna be 7 to 8 pounds. But again, it can be lighter. I can completely strip this down, remove the breakout box, just have the V-mount battery, remove the cage, and just have the lens mount. or lens adapter and a lens, and I can save weight like that. But that's the type of stuff that you can do with a cinema camera, and the image is going to look really well. I have bots. Bots are making comments. I need a moderator. I need a moderator to get rid of these bots. Anyways, but yeah, that's the thing. Another thing that I left out that's kind of important. Now, if you have an LED wall, there's something called the moire effect. Now, the moire effect is, now if you point a camera to it, you might see like lines in the LED wall and etc. A cinema camera can help with that. Not only the color would be a bit better or more true, but you can change the shutter angle. What is the shutter angle? Now, the shutter angle is different than your shutter speed. Shutter speed might be 1 over something, 1 over 50. Shutter angle is going to be like in degrees, 180, 270, 360. Now, if you change your shutter angle, most of the time I have it on 180 on the red, but if I change it to like 172 point something, I completely get rid of the moire effect, those lines. So those are the type of things you can do with a cinema camera. They're expensive, but they solve a lot of problems that you have in cinema. They just do. And it's like years of testing, years of trial and error. And that's what caused cinema cameras to look the way they look, operate the way they operate, and last as long as they last. So, yeah. So those are the few pointers and tips as why you should choose a cinematic camera over a broadcasting camera. I'm gonna ban this person. Yeah, a cinematic camera over a broadcasting camera for streaming. Are there any questions? Any type of questions that you guys want to ask about the rig, about colors? Any technical questions that you might have? If you guys don't ask in the stream, you guys can leave a comment in the comment section, and I will definitely get back to you. I am pretty quick at responding, so don't be afraid to leave your questions. Yeah. So if there are no other comments, no spam comments either, because I'm streaming on different platforms at the same time. Not only on YouTube, I'm also on Kick and Twitch. Spam. All right, yeah. I will catch you guys in the next one. Make sure you guys enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and happy streaming. Get out there and stream. Get out there and make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes, you know? That's how you learn. Peace.